Hey strangers, happy Tuesday. I have another true, scary story for you. This one is story number 102. I had a friend in college. She had very unusual hair and tattoos, like full throat tattoos. We used to call that the eternal job stopper. Her hair was dyed a different color at the ends. Seemed to switch that up every time I saw her. It always looked cool though. Very cool. Angela was more than her style. She was a really fun, easygoing girl. Kind of girl you called any hour of the day. Any plan or idea and she was down. And yeah, I thought about dating her. But Angela was the kind of girl who was beating him off with a stick, so to speak. And I guess I was happy enough being her friend without bringing something awkward into it. A girl like Angela gets a lot of attention. Some was direct. Some, well, not so much. Dudes playing it safe. All I know is, one day, she forwards me a screenshot with a smiley face emoji, except the smiley face looked drunk or stoned. I'm not sure what that little squiggly smile is supposed to mean. Anyway, the screenshot was of a Craigslist missed connection. Per her, it had been forwarded to her by another friend because they'd recognized her. And upon reading it, yeah, it was about Angela. Not some generic, hey you cutie. It said something about how it was always a treat to see what bagel she'd get on Tuesdays. Always Tuesday, different bagel every time. The person assumed it was a treat to tide her over, because her class, Accounting 101, must have been so dry. Went on to ask her why she'd boil her brains out under that dip-dyed hair when she could just coast on her looks. It was one of the reasons the writer admired her. He closed it by saying, "Today it was an everything bagel, and you are my everything." That was laying it on a little thick. I asked her Men in Black style if she was carrying her textbook for Accounting 101 into any bagel shops recently. She laughed, said she was sure she had. We live in a town with 2 major colleges, so it's not that hard to figure out. And in her age demographic, and with her general college major look, it wasn't so hard to put the pieces together. Maybe it's because I'm a guy and that level of attention, down to what bagel flavor I chow down on, seemed sus. I told her to switch up her routine. She assured me she would, and then we got back to talking about something else, as though it was a one-time blip on radar that would otherwise go quiet. Life got in the way, and I went a couple of weeks without talking to Angela as far as I can remember. When I saw her again, she looked ragged. She had her hair up under a watch cap. She'd let the dye go so her roots, this caramel blonde color, showed. No makeup. Clothes were sort of like the watch cap, oversized and weird for her style. I asked her if anything was up. At first, that "I'm game for everything Angela" waved it off. But it was such a change I had to keep pushing. Finally, she pulled out her phone and showed me her gallery. It was screenshots of missed connections, and they were all like the first one I described, just breathing over your shoulder level of detail. I remember getting heated that she hadn't taken my advice. But the thing was, she had. She'd switched up her whole routine. Morning classes for evening ones. different gym, different subway, different grocery store. She played off the first misconnection like it was nothing. She got a lot of attention. I'm sure it wasn't anything new. But as I scrolled, the sheer number of how many she'd screenshot, I asked. She told me she didn't know how many there were because she couldn't be sure she collected all of them. There was at least one every time she looked, though. And when I asked her how often she looked, she confessed she'd fallen into a rabbit hole of checking several times a day. I paused to read one. It was about how her hair was so bouncy when she ran, how he loved the little ponytails for that, how he thought about grabbing her by them, forcing her to watch him the way that he watched her take it, and that was enough of that. The guy was going places with that post. Not heaven, but places. Every one of the posts I read was just as detailed. Flavor of Slurpee she got from a gas station. Red shoelaces on her left shoe only, in the shoes she'd only worn once because they matched something. Brand of rolling tobacco her old man carried, when he'd taken it out and rolled himself one while they were at the park. It's dumb, but all I could think to do was help her out. Double down, distract her with something new and outside of any routine or place she'd ever been. I opened up my phone and started searching deliberately across the state line and found a rock climbing gym on some social events website. And we went. On a random Thursday, we went. I fell a lot, her not as much, but she laughed, and it felt good, like I was seeing her again. And that high lasted until approximately 4 minutes after I got home. She texted that she got home at 8:52. I decided to check the missed connections to see if anything had been said. I was kind of hoping that the guy would write about how pissed she was she'd fallen off his radar. I was looking forward to feeling victorious about that. Instead, what do I find? Quote, "I don't like the look of your new friend. At least I know from his lack of athleticism, I could take him handily. I will take you handily." Posted at 8:54. Now I was freaked. I insisted we went to the cops. She hated the idea, but I was done fooling around with this mess. I will take you handily. Christ almighty. Cops? Next to worthless, though. Essentially told us no proof it was the same guy writing to the same girl. No overt threats. She had social media, but the guy had never contacted her there. No habeas concern. Protect and serve who? Still, cops had to take a note, start a case about it. That, they were happy to tell us, was because it'd help if things got worse. Buddy, why would we wait until things escalated when we could step in when the guy was only in his starting paces, right? Now I was hooked. I checked the missed connections often. Not every time I did, but plenty of them. I caught the guy's posts. It's funny. There were tons of posts a day, big college town like ours, but I could always tell his by the title. He just had a particular way of writing. No acronyms. Had some physical descriptor that matched Angela. But the thing that really gave the guy away was weird capitalization. Not every other letter like that SpongeBob meme, but he capitalized letters at the beginning of syllables. Party would have a capital P and T, party. Closet, a capital C and S. Same deal for other words that set my teeth on edge. basement, possess, punish, naked. The guy was winding up. He still started each post with normal, casual encounter sort of details, but now they were evolving. Barely made it in 2 sentences of pleasantries before slipping in that he'd been picturing his hands around her throat for weeks. He, quote, would make the whites of her eyes turn as red as her one red shoelace, which would be very appropriate for Valentine's. And it was Valentine's, specifically Valentine's of 2020. And we all know what happened next. Classes went online. The stay-at-home order was swift and lingered. And Angela is probably the only case of somebody I know that really benefited from it. She took drastic action while we were all isolating. She buzzed her head and took to wearing a long, blonde bob wig. She would ask friends to come get her and drive her to Costco, where she'd stock up on food. She went home for summer break, bought a new car, and when she came back, she lived with me, who had also moved, for a month, until we could get a new apartment lined up for her. I kept an eye on the missed connections while she was away. At first, it was like the guy had pre-written them. But by now, I could tell something was off. He wasn't describing where he'd seen her today. He'd say he liked a certain skirt, but it wasn't one that she wore that day, even had anymore. He was going off of a memory, and that memory was eerie good by itself. But it was clear he'd lost his ability to surveil her the way he'd been doing. And after she left for summer break, the everyday posts stopped. Weekly, then bi-weekly, and then only once more. As far as I know, of course, but yeah, only once did I see something that alarmed me. It sounded just like him. You may have slipped out of your old look, but you're still the girl I love. I will find you, no matter what. We're fated. When you needed help, I was there. When you needed water, I was there. And when you graduate, when you send out your resume, you'll be leading me back to you again. I had been monitoring the situation without telling Angela. I hated the way she'd changed. Oh, she was still fun, she could still laugh, but that carefree, freewheeling part of her was gone, and I hated the guy for that. He stole her freedom, and for what? Because he was an obsessive lunatic? That should be his problem, not hers. But all the steps she'd taken seemed to have given him the slip, and she was coming out of it. No way did I want to bring that a-hole back up and watch the concern fall over her face again. So yeah, I wasn't going to tell her about that last post, any of them. But needed water. That stuck out. It was his same level of specificity, but it was specific about him. He'd slipped up. So I broached the topic with her, and Angela scrolled back in her phone, trying to pinpoint any situation she'd been around water or needed it before the whole thing started. I gotta say, you gotta love camera phones for that. It was an easy way to look back and figure out a timeline. And that's when we figured out what is likely all we'll ever know. Around that time, another friend had invited Angela to attend an adult martial arts class. Free week passes to try it out. The only catch, you had to write down your name, address, and phone number to get that pass. I asked if she remembered someone giving her water, and she did. Mostly. See, she remembered a distinct impression of a tall, thin guy handing her one of those promotional water bottles. He'd made a big deal about the fact that he'd fetched water for her, wasn't just handing her an empty. All she could really remember about him, though, was that he had dark hair, thick on his exposed arms. But for the life of her, she couldn't remember his face. We pulled up the business, flipped through all 100 of their Facebook pictures of classes and instructors, but not a single one jogged her memory. And that was it. Thinking back to how worthless going to the cops had been originally, I couldn't imagine taking them this weak lead. She didn't even have a name. And who knew anyway? The guy could have been a weak passer like her, could have put down a fake name and address, could have been not him at all. I mean, how out of place is it for someone to offer you water in a group exercise class? Angela has moved since. Different town, all of it. We still speak, and she seems to be doing well. We don't talk about this anymore. I don't know her reason, but I'm afraid to jinx the silence. There's no moral to this story. There's no nice little conclusion with the detective getting the confession, the motive, all laid out in 37 minutes with commercial breaks. It's just the story of a girl I knew, getting unwanted attention from a guy who missed his connection with her, and with reality. I read once that Alfred Hitchcock's The Birds is considered one of the scariest movies of all time. Reason given? Because it's inexplicable. I mean, think about it. There's no nuclear power plant explosion that mutates the birds into predators. There's no summoning ritual that sets our avian friends against us. It's just one day, the birds decided they didn't like us anymore, and that no motherfucking breadcrumbs was going to sate their hunger. And then, just like that, it stops. Completely inexplicable. I think that's what sets my alarms off about this story. Who knows why somebody will look at you and do a double take a screenshot of you in their memory and hold it long after you've left. How many people will hold prisoner a moment of you in time? I hope you're all safe out there. Like, subscribe. Let me know what you think. Thank you for dropping by. It's always good to talk to you. And until next time, take care, stranger.